Hello, how are you? This is Rudy Lozano, broker for PRG Platinum. As the days and the weeks continue to evolve with these new changes from this NAR settlement, I just want to express to you guys that be patient with your broker, the operations managers, the compliance managers, anybody that's a designated supervisor, team lead. We're all trying to understand these forms, digest them, so that way we can help you get through them. So that way you guys are in compliance. And then most of you guys are mostly concerned about the compensation on the buying side, as well as listing agents are concerned with the selling the value to be able to pay compensation to um, offer shared compensation to whoever is bringing the buyer because that's what's going to get the listing sold, right? Uh, so today we're going to cover the compensation. I touched on it in detail last week about under what circumstances or what is the requirement or the commitment or the expectation from the seller as far as the commissions. So on a residential real estate listing agreement exclusive right to sell, um, page 2 of 11, 5A, of course, mentions that there will be shared compensation, broker fee with compensation for other broker. The total amount is referenced in A1, A1A. Let's say you collect six, and then on section two, you're going to mention that you're going to share a certain percentage. So if you're collecting six, you're going to share three. That's where you would put three. And then number three is very important. 5A3, seller authorizes broker to publicly disclose compensation for the other broker as specified in 5A2. So if you're taking on the listing for six, you're telling the broker that you're going to share it with other brokerages, and you're specifying that it's going to be 2 or 3%. Well, you're being authorized to actually market that. You can't do it on MLS, but you certainly can do it on your own website, the company website, through text, through email, through QR code, through your e-signature. There's a number of ways where you can be in compliance to the exclusive right to list by being fully transparent. Now, four clearly identifies under what condition the listing brokerage can actually keep all the compensation, which is through intermediary, if the seller has agreed to intermediary, as well as the buyer has agreed to intermediary. That is a requirement from TREC that both the buyer and seller must agree to intermediary in writing for that to occur. And then the other scenario would be um, that the listing brokerage represent or write up an unrepresented buyer. In other words, an investor telling you exactly what offer they want to make. They're not asking you for advice and opinion. You will be writing up the offer, but you represent the seller. At that moment, the brokerage is privileged to both compensations. Now, changing gears. The only time, and we're seeing it presently right now where when you're calling the listing agents, they're telling you, well, the compensation depends on your offer. Um, it's subject to, or it needs to be acceptable to the seller, or let's see. Well, under 5A, under shared compensation, they're saying they're not only going to share it, but then they're going to market it. And then, of course, um, if the listing brokerage doesn't in 5A under one under 5A1, it says if broker does not pay the other broker that prefers a buyer as specified in paragraph 5A2, broker's fee in this paragraph 5A1 will be reduced by any amount not paid to the other broker. So you can't take on 6% compensation, said you were going to share three, offer one, and then keep two, because that's not how the contract's written. You must rebate the other two or reduce the compensation by that extra 2% that you're not offering the buyer's agent. Why in the world anybody would want to do that? Because then if the seller is instructing you that they want a quick sale because they have to take on a job in a different city or state, your marketing efforts could be detrimental to the seller, and therefore you're putting yourself or creating a tort situation or a liability situation for not only your brokerage but yourself. And then, these lawsuits aren't going to go away if people aren't fully transparent and aren't comprehending the forms. In the only circumstance where a listing agent or brokerage has the right to tell you that it's subject to or doesn't want to go on record, um, isn't being offered, isn't being marketed, it's because there is no compensation. There is no compensation. They're checking off five being broker's fee without compensation for the other broker. The only person that will get paid in these scenarios will be the listing brokerage. So they might be charging 3%. They get to keep the 3%, but then there is no performance expectations or marketing expectations or authorization to market any kind of compensation. So listing agents are telling you it's subject to your offer because there is no compensation. Okay. So we're going to transition to one of our coaches, Mr. David Knox. We offer an online university here at PRG Platinum. Mr. David Knox has been an industry expert for well over 30 years. A wonderful online university. He has tons of scripts for you, um, a lot of role playing, a lot of checklists. And we're getting ready to check out a video having to do with um, a seller's consultation when you're taking on that listing agreement. That way, you can have that conversation about the compensation. Okay, um, that video is ready.
How many times have you heard me say role play, role play? So we're doing it again. I want to demonstrate it. There's no finer way to learn this business than to practice and doing it in a role play. And that's what I'm doing again, practicing what I preach. We just shot a role play on the buyer not wanting to pay the commission. Now we're going to do the tough one where a seller says, I don't want to pay the buyer agent a commission. And I'm joined by Steve Westmark. Steve, thank you very much. Thanks for being in the studio. One of the benefits of role playing with you as a seller is you've done a million sellers, so you can role play the way they are. So in this scenario, we've gone through the listing presentation. We're going to assume that you like me, you like the company, but you don't want to pay the buyer agent commission. And if you want, we can do it a little bit more resistant. Okay, and just play it out that way. So for all of you watching, this is your opportunity to put into your brain what you might say to your seller on the next listing presentation. So, Steve, you're ready to go ahead and put the home on the market?
Well, I am, but they have this big lawsuit that came out, and I've been reading about, and there's a lot of positive about it, that we're going to be able to negotiate our commission and save some money. Okay. So, what kind of commission are you going to charge me? I like you to. I know you know what you're doing, and I want you to represent me. So.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, and you're right. As the suit came out, it did a couple of things. One, it said that we have to have buyer agents agreements with buyers. We're absolutely for that. Number two, commissions had to be transparent. And that's why, as I've shown you, our fee is X% of the full sale price. And part of what we do in that fee is we pay drone, video photography, we do videos, I do some staging. My broker gets a piece of it. I get it for my profit, and also I have made the choice to pay out to a buyer agent should they bring a buyer to your home. And so commissions are negotiable in that they are not set by some third party, but I do have, as a business person, a fee schedule that I choose to charge. And this is the schedule I charge, and I believe that it's in your best interest to pay out to a buyer agent. So I guess I'd put it back to you. Do I hear you saying you'd prefer not to do that?
Well, that was the exciting thing I think about everybody's talking about, is that the buyer is going to have to pay their own commission now. Yep. And they'll pay half and I'll pay half, and I'm happy to pay half.
Okay. Well, and by the way, Commissions were always negotiable. Payment to the buyer agent has always been negotiable. It did kind of fall into a pattern where there wasn't a lot of discussion, and now there's more discussion about it. And the answer is, Steve, you don't have to pay the buyer agent commission. You don't. But you could if you wanted to.
Okay.
Which begs the question, why would I want to do that? So let me share with you 6 reasons why you may want to pay out a buyer commission. Number 1 is, here in the Twin Cities, 87.4% of sales are through the multiple listing service or co-op agents. Now, I'm one agent. I'm a good agent, but I'm not all the agents. And by offering a buyer agent compensation, we reward all these thousands of agents here in Minneapolis to bring buyers to you. Part of my promotion on your property is I got to sell it to my fellow agents. So when they go in and look at, oh, wow, this is a great home, so they bring their buyers. And I may be the one who brings a buyer, but there's an 80-some% chance it'll be somebody else. So that's one reason why you may want to consider offering a buyer agent compensation. Number 2, buyers today are strapped for cash. They've been killed by inflation. They're short of cash. They're scraping to get money for their down payment, closing costs, and then moving costs. So now all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, we got to pay our own commission. Buyers may select a property based on that. And I need to say something very careful. We as real estate agents, it is highly unethical, illegal for us to steer a buyer to a property based on pretty much anything other than meeting their needs. And we cannot steer a buyer to a property based on compensation. But the buyers may choose. They choose a home based on price, terms, taxes, bedrooms, and they may ask the question, is there buyer agent compensation? If there isn't, it could become a barrier to them.
Okay.
So that's a challenge. The next reason is that they may ask for it anyway, to which you can say no. But now we're in this negotiating situation back and forth, and they ask and you don't want to say yes, and now we've kind of muddied up the transaction. So those are some challenges.
Okay.
So how do you feel about those so far?
I guess I like the idea of saving the money.
Yeah. Maybe I could ask it a different way. When you bought this home, was your buyer agent compensation covered in the transaction?
It was.
It was. Had it not been, what would you have done?
I would have figured out how to do it.
And would you have done it? Would you have still looked at the house?
If I liked the house, for sure, yes.
Okay. So you may have found a way to come up with it.
Right.
So then I'll go one step further. Once we sell this home, you're going to purchase a home for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would you like your buyer agent compensation handled on the one that you buy?
Well, I hope that the compensation will be paid by the seller.
Why?
Then I don't have to pay it.
Okay. As a seller, you don't want to pay it. As a buyer, you don't want to pay it. And so that's where the negotiation comes down. I believe that it is in your best interest to just cut it off at the knees, offer it, and all the negotiation is done. We put it on the market. The buyer says that offering buyer agent compensation. Their agent says, yeah, they are. Okay, good. Let's go look at it. So it takes that out as a problem. You know, is it on a busy street? No. Is it short a bedroom? No. Are they offering buyer agent compensation? Yes. They go, let's go see this house. So it just makes your home more marketable. We compensate the agents on the other side. Because I think if a good offer came in where they asked for it, where you netted what you want to net, would you pay it?
Yes.
I truly believe that when you offer it, you'll get more buyers, faster sale, and probably will sell for more. So some people might say, well, does the buyer agent commission raise the value of home? It could, because they're willing to pay for it included in the price. So I guess in the end, the choice is yours. And what would you like to do?
I'll go your way.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
Okay. For those of you watching, I hope it helps you. And just sit down with each other and do it. Don't go longer than maybe 5 minutes or something. And then be sure to have your side recorded on your mobile device, and you can go back and look at it. And some of you are going to say, yeah, I'm horrible at role playing. Yeah, you are, because you've never done it. Then the first time you do it, you're going to be horrible. Maybe the second. By the third, you're going to be pretty good. And after that, you go, this is kind of fun. So Steve, thank you very much, and thank you all for watching.
So no doubt about it. You need to know and understand what your responsibility and your fiduciary duties are when you take on a listing. A seller is hiring you to market the property, to procure a buyer, and it is your fiduciary duty to explain to them that by not following your advice and opinion, by you collecting 6% and sharing part of that to whoever brings you a qualified buyer or a cash buyer, that person needs to get compensated. Because no doubt about it, there's no incentive like the financial one, but also the essence of time. Do you want this property? What will it cost you if the house sits 4 to 6 months? That they're going to wish they would have paid that 3%, or that they authorized their broker to offer shared compensation. So that way, rather than buyers agents drive the client 80 miles past their home and they end up at a new home community or on the other side of town because they located homes that were a better fit to include better school district and square footage, as well as who's going to pay for the compensation. Don't allow the compensation to be a deterrent um, for you to take on more business. But at the same time, just know that if, you know, especially here in the city of San Antonio with over 10,000 agents, um, you know, by not attracting 80% of the agents working with people that are working with agents that are in need of buyer's agency, as well as they're needing the seller to compensate their agent, they might not make it through the door. So once again, more than 80 to 85% of real estate transactions in the San Antonio area involve two brokerages. By you not marketing your listing, making it enticing for a buyer's agent to bring their qualified client to your listing, you are doing the seller uh, um, a disfavor, which could be detrimental to the marketing of their home. Rather than 10 days on market, it might be on market 120 days. I don't know. But certainly by paying a buyer's agent commission, and that the seller is on board, especially if they have other goals and dreams and timelines, job opportunities that they need to take, relocate their children across town or across state or across country, to their next destination. 3% is going to be a drop in the bucket in the event that their house sits for 4 to 6 months. So once again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's different ways to explain it. I mean, the market is very tight. Folks are being challenged with inflation, but certainly, transitioning to our last video here, we are going to be giving the seller some advice on the importance of a, encouraging a buyer's agent to bring their qualified clients. Okay.
Welcome to KFT 163, Listing Advice to Sellers. Recently, some really good friends of mine were looking for a listing agent to handle the sale of one of their family members' condos, their mother and mother-in-law. And they'd heard all the media on the NAR lawsuit, and they needed advice on selecting an agent. Now, they know I've been in the industry for years, and they contacted me for assistance, and I was very flattered to be contacted and decided to draft a really detailed letter to them. And when I was all done, I thought, hey, this would be a great letter for all of you to see. It's a real letter to real people, and maybe you can use it in your own business. And I realized that there were 3 categories of advice that I needed to provide. 1, explanation of the lawsuit. Number 2, criteria for selecting an agent, and questions to ask a prospective agent. I also provided a referral to a specific agent. And in this video, I'm going to show you the actual letter, then go into the detail of its contents. And perhaps you can use something similar as pre-listing advice to your sellers. The objectives of this video are to identify key points of advice to help sellers select the listing agent, to review an actual advice letter, to create a pre-listing letter to precede your next listing appointment, and finally, build your listing presentation around these key points. So here is the letter that I wrote to my friends, and the copy is in your support materials and you can follow along. I've redacted their names, of course. But the sections that I covered were the NAR lawsuit, then I went through the major points of the lawsuit ruling, and then I went through the key question, should I still offer compensation to the buyer agent? And I gave my answers for that. Some real estate metrics. Here are some things, days on market, price range, things like that. And then I went to areas to research. And this comes into a marketing plan that I'm going to give all of you. The 8 major things that happen in any real estate transaction, and you can use that in your pre-listing package. And finally, questions to ask the agent. They are also asking me for a referral to another agent, which I gave them. But I want you to download the listing presentation structure for your marketing plan, because the 8 major steps in here are part of the letter. You can have the best listing presentation by going through this outline. So first of all, I talked about the NAR lawsuit, some of the dates in March when it kind of came down, and then in August 17th when it became final. And I addressed that the charge of the industry had set a standard commission rate that was not negotiable, and that they had reached a fairly consistent level, making it look like there was some kind of antitrust. Kind of like when attorneys say their contingency fee is 30 or 33%. Well, what's the difference? It reached its level. And also that the typical arrangement was for the listing agent to collect the commission from the seller and then share part of it with the co-op agent. So let's begin with that historical perspective. And then I continued that the lawsuit alleged sellers weren't aware the commission rate and split were negotiable, and that the DOJ had a concern that agents would steer buyers to homes that offered higher commissions. So I just laid it out as the truth of the lawsuit. Next, I went into the lawsuit ruling and went through the 3 points. I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing them, but number 1, that commission rates and payment to the co-op agent must be transparent and negotiable. Number 2, that offers of compensation may not be advertised on the multiple listing service, but they still may be communicated between agents. And number 3, that agent and buyers must enter into a buyer agency agreement prior to looking at homes. You guys know all of this, but in the letter, I thought it needed an explanation. So then the heart of this, should sellers offer compensation to the buyer agent? And in the letter I say the simple answer is sellers don't have to offer it and never did. However, it became very common practice in the industry. But the question remains, is it a good idea for sellers to offer compensation? And here's what I wrote in the letter. Number 1 reason, the majority of residential homes are actually sold by the co-op agent. Your listing agent is only one person with access to his or her database, whereas the MLS opens it to everyone else. Number 2, many buyers are strapped for cash. They need it for down payment, closing costs, moving costs. So even in higher price ranges, this is true. So it could affect their choice of homes. And that's what number 3 is, that a buyer's choice of home, although agents, you guys, you can't steer based on anything, but buyers may select home based on price, terms, taxes, bedrooms, photos, personal property, and they might do it based on the offer of compensation. And number 4 is buyers are still free to ask for compensation in the purchase agreement. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, even if you don't offer it, they might ask for it. And then it brings it up in a big negotiating, and it's much cleaner if you just offer it up front. And 5, by the way, those of you who followed some of my Zooms and Facebook Lives, this is perhaps the most powerful part of it. When you're in a conversation with the sellers and they're debating whether to offer compensation, verbally ask these questions. Here, I did it in the letter. Number 1, was your buyer agent compensation paid when you bought this home? And of course, up until now, the answer is mostly yes. Number 2, if compensation wasn't offered, how would that have affected your purchase? Let them think about that. And finally, the key question, you're buying another home after selling this. How would you like your buyer agent compensation covered and why? That's a great, powerful question. Next, let's talk about real estate agent metrics. In my commission seminars with all of you guys, I've talked about selling value metrics, differentiating yourself from another agent. So I'm training these sellers to do the same thing. And what should they look for? Experience in the general location type of property, price range, years in the business. I think sale to list ratio is a critical number. What percentage of original asking price do they get? Expiration, how many homes do they list? Actually sell. Days on market, I think, is a great measurement standard. Now, some people look at a short days on market, meaning that they underpriced the home, but you can deal with that. And finally, personal productivity. People talk about, how many agents they have in the company. What I'm more interested in is what your productivity per person is. So those are some standards that a seller can look at. Then areas to research. This is really the heart of your listing presentation. So in the letter, I wanted to teach the sellers that there are 8 major things that happen when you list your home. Number 1 is marketing management. That's the overall general contracting of the transaction, all the paperwork, MLS, submissions, photos, all of that. You guys manage the whole process. That's critical. Number 2, exposure to agents. For years, even before the NAR lawsuit, in this presentation, I said it's what agents do to expose property to the other agents far more important than the public, because that's where most of the buyers are going to come from. Next, exposure to public. This is the visible part that sellers say, well, what are you going to do to market it online and advertising and flyers, when in fact, the majority actually come from the previous thing. But this is where you talk about your marketing. Next, securing prospects. Anybody can market a home, anybody can get the phone to ring, but who's going to answer the phone? Who's going to respond to the text? Who is going to reply to the email? And this is where you teach your sellers, you want somebody who can secure the prospect, and you need to talk about your lead capture process. The next major thing that realtors do for sellers is to demonstrate the home. And this is kind of a catch-all category for everything visual. We talk about photos, aerial drone video, HDR photography, staging, cleaning, all the things, and scheduling the showings. How do you get people in? How do you get the feedback on the showings? This is a huge category that we refer to in the letter and that you need to refer to in your listing presentation. Next is securing an agreement to purchase. The agent needs the ability to negotiate a transaction, get a signed contract. That's a big deal. That takes lots of skill. And the next is a closed transaction. Now that might seem trivial, but in fact, the problems that occur between signing a contract and closing of escrow can kill the transaction. This is where you sell your ability to manage that entire process, financing, appraisals, inspection, repair, you know, all the stuff that happens. And only if you manage that properly do the sellers get the most important step, and that is their net equity check. I truly believe that what I've just taken you through is a good thing to put in a letter to a seller, and it's a great thing around which to build your listing presentation. Next, we want to talk about the questions to ask your agent. And you can put whatever in you want, and obviously you have to have these answers ready. But, you know, what makes you different from other agents in the market? What is the value of my home, and how will you determine that? What marketing will you use to attract buyers? How do you interact with co-op agents in this market? That is so critical. How should I handle the payment of buyer-agent compensation? Describe your property preparation methods, staging, photography, MLS, etc. What changes should I make to improve the appeal of my home? How can you help me transition out of my next? And should I get a pre-listing inspection? And actually, I think this is a great idea. So all of these questions will help sellers choose you. In summary, sellers need reliable advice on choosing their listing agent. And you can use this sample as a basis for your advice. So create a pre-listing letter to be delivered prior to your presentation, and then build your listing presentation around these key points. I hope this helps you on your next listing presentation. Thanks for watching.
Alrighty, guys, this brings an end to our training today. I can't emphasize enough for those of you that are taking extensive classes, getting designations, you know, how important it is for you to read these forms, digest them, comprehend them, and be able to explain them in layman terms to your client, because they need to understand that a buyer's agent gets paid for one thing and one thing only, and that's to bring you a highly qualified candidate, whether it be cash or with financing. Okay, everything else is secondary. So once again, you have to have those deep discussions with your seller and be able to explain to them that it is in their best interest to pay full compensation. That way, their home sells quickly in the least amount of time, because time is money. Sell your home quickly, price it correctly. Help me help you. And once again, your advice and opinion should be that you could not do this job on your own, that you have a team, you have menu pricing, and you collect the entire commission. And you as a listing broker or listing agent decide to share it to be able to market their property and prepare a buyer. Because everybody's strapped for cash. You know, the prices have always been negotiable. Compensation has always been included somehow or another in the price. But you being able to explain that to a seller and put them in the buyer's shoes, especially right now with our challenging marketplace and economy, that by not offering that compensation means more days on market, or that the buyer's agents might expose properties that were a better fit, one story, in the right school district. And of course, buyers are going to make a decision based on money as well, because most people can probably cover the down payment and the closing costs, but they might not be able to pay the compensation. So once again, those are discussions on the other spectrum that are being had when buyers agents are having their buyers orientation, is filtering criteria. Okay. So once again, thank you for joining us today.